for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the NCCOP report makes clear the Prime Minister was advised back in 2018 of the national security threats against Parliament from hostile foreign states. He was advised that measures in place at the time were not sufficient. He was advised to take further action. 3 times, the senior civil service asked for his approval for action to protect Parliament in December 2019, in December 2020, and again in February 2022. 3 times the Prime Minister withheld that approval. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I think our honourable colleague knows very well that our government was the first government to put in place a series of measures to strengthen our institutions and our democracy from the threat of foreign interference. He knows very well that that threat was identified publicly in 2013 in a CSIS report when the Leader of the Opposition was responsible for democratic institutions, and they did absolutely nothing, Mr. Speaker. So I find it somewhat ironic that my friend would stand in his place and say that our government, the first government to act in this important area and continue to strengthen these measures, hasn't done enough.
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the report reveals that parliamentarians, including members of this House, knowingly and wittingly assisted a hostile foreign state in Parliament and in our elections to the detriment of the people of Canada. This is shocking. And Mr. Speaker, I can't believe the following needs to be said. Parliamentarians' duty is not to a foreign state, but to the people of Canada. Simple question. Will the Prime Minister release the names of these parliamentarians?
It's the right thing to do.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety and Democratic Institutions.
Monsieur le Président, mon collègue, c'est...
Mr. Speaker, we all know that no responsible government would reveal names under these types of confidential circumstances.
Abso-freaking-lutely they would.
A government that cares about Canada's security and our institutions would do such a thing. I am very pleased that there are parliamentarians in this House who have the right security clearance to get all the information that underlies the NCCOP report. I would invite my colleagues to read that report properly. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, this government has tried to deny and diminish the scope of foreign interference in Canada. But the NCCOP report unmasks this Prime Minister's guilt and indifference. The report revealed that parliamentarians, including MPs in this House, knowingly helped hostile foreign countries to interfere in this Parliament and elections. That all goes against the interests of Canada and Canadians. It's shocking and unacceptable. This Prime Minister has the power and the duty, especially, to do something about that. Will he reveal the names of these MPs?
There's a poll down in the live chat.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
For those that want to vote.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, it's concerning to see how irresponsible our colleagues across the way are. They are asking for something that is simply not done. I would ask my colleague to speak to his own leader and ask him to accept the government's invitation to receive the appropriate security clearance in order to be able to see all of the highly classified information that our colleagues on the National Security Committee have seen. That would perhaps be a more honest way to make a point.
Oh, let's go, Andrew Scheer.
The Liberal defense of the carbon tax is in complete shambles. First, they only want Canadians to focus on the direct costs of the carbon tax and ignore all the secondary effects like smaller paychecks and higher prices, as if Canadians have a choice of which carbon tax costs they have to pay. But now we learned that there's a secret report that does show the true cost. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says that it proves that he's right, that the vast majority of Canadians are worse off paying the tax than any rebate they receive. The Liberals claim that it proves they're right. There's an easy way to settle this. Why won't the government just release the report so Canadians can decide?
Yeah.
The Honourable House Leader for the Government.
Mr. Speaker, math is really not the long suit of the party over there. The PBO has specifically said and repeated time after time, you would think they'd understand that 8 out of 10 Canadians
Nope.
better off
Nope.
under the price on
Nope.
than in
It's been debunked. Nope.
The fact is, though, Mr. Speaker, they talk of gag orders. We haven't seen the member for Peace River Westlock in a long, long time. And what about the former chair of the Status of Women Committee? We haven't seen her either. They are not anytime going to give less.
It will get leaked. I have full confidence it'll get leaked.
Individuals, we can't say whether someone's here or not, so just to be careful on that.
Uh-oh.
Over Regina Cabell.
Apparently, answering questions doesn't seem to be this minister's long suit. Their responses here are completely ridiculous. They claim that this report exonerates their position, but they won't release it. This is a little bit like someone who's accused of a crime walking into court saying they have an amazing alibi that proves that they're innocent, but they just can't show it to anybody. Here's the thing, Mr. Speaker, if you won't show your evidence to the jury, you're probably guilty. Why not do the easy thing, release the report, remove the gag order so Canadians can decide?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start by wishing a happy World Environment Day to all Canadians, especially to the failed former leader of the Conservative Party, the member from Regina Capel, and the new leader of the Conservative Party from Carleton, who have voted against the environment over 400 times in this House of Commons, Mr. Speaker. It's clear where they stand on climate change, and it's clear where they stand on environmental protections. But Conservatives continue to mislead Canadians. Our government will continue to support the good work of the PBO, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry that Conservative math just isn't adding up these days.
Why don't you jump into another person's DMs and tell them to F off?
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that the Liberal carbon tax increases the cost of everything while failing to bring down emissions. The Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed that Canadians are paying more than they're getting back from this so-called rebate. The Liberals are clearly afraid that Canadians will know the truth, and that is that the carbon tax has made life unaffordable.
That's right.
When will this government stop the cover-up, release the report, and confirm what we all know, that Canadians are suffering because of this carbon tax?
Because of Trudeau. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad the Conservatives are finally asking a couple of questions that are at least in the neighborhood of the economy. The next step for them is to recognize how significant today is. Today is the day that Canada, first among the G7, lowered interest rates. It's the first time rates have gone down since COVID hit. This is a tremendously important day for Canada, and it is our responsible economic plan that has made it possible.
L'Honorable Député de Lac.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the Prime Minister will finally meet François Legault.
Thanks, Nat Well, for the super chat. Appreciate it.
It's high time. 4 months.
It's in euros.
Doing anything about Quebec's influx of new arrivals. Monday needs to be a turning point. The federal government
it's like $1 bajillion Canadian.
Has been asking for temporary immigration to be reduced and that French requirements be brought into federal programs. It's also asking for asylum claims to be shared fairly, and it's asking for a reimbursement of $1 billion. So, on Monday, will the Prime Minister finally sign the check on Monday? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Mr. Speaker, I know that the Bloc Québécois wants to speed up the processing of asylum claims, but what's really hypocritical...
This guy, he always looks like he's scared, like a toddler that's been caught red-handed with the hand in the cookie jar or something.
Speed up asylum claims process.
Just always scared. His eyebrows are always up. His eyes are always wide open.
The Premier of Quebec thinks the Bloc Québécois is useless. I don't share that opinion, but I'm starting to lose my convictions in that regard. Well, Mr. Speaker, if the federal government thinks that $1 billion is too much, it could have done something about asylum claims before. It could also have reduced that bill by doing its job, especially on work permits. According to Quebec, asylum claims represent 20% of people on welfare, not because they don't want to work, but because they're not allowed to do so. Minister Fréchette has confirmed that on average they have to wait for work permits for 10 to 11 months. That's what Minister Fréchette said. When will Ottawa stop keeping these people in a life of poverty? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the entire opposition opposed our reforms on asylum, which would have sped things up. I find it ridiculous. They should admit what they're doing. We've talked about dark and light blue, and as for Monday's meeting, they'll have to wait until Monday.